Welcome back. Time for the Hot Topic Buzz. California's indoor mask mandate apparently did not apply to celebrities at Super Bowl 56. Jay-Z, Matt Damon, Charlize Theron, J-Lo, Ben Affleck, many more. All spotted without face coverings, much like everybody else in SoFi Stadium. Liz Peek, all the celebrities get to flout the rules, I guess. Today, California school kids have to still mask up. Your thoughts?
You know, Maria, it's so offensive. This
quote emergency measure should be going away soon, Mike, given the fact that the emergency declaration is supposed to be either ending or renewed on March 1st. We'll see what the administration does. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, the state of California still has a state of emergency. If you can have a Super Bowl with 70,000 people, you are clearly not in any sort of emergency. And remember, there are rules for the plebeians, the unwashed masses, the everyday people, but those rules don't apply to those in the ruling class, the rich, and those people in charge. So I wonder if Eric Garcetti was holding his breath the entire time he was at the Super Bowl and has developed some sort of world record Wim Hof breath holding technique. But, again, another disgusting display of condescension and hypocrisy from the leaders.
Yeah, we keep seeing it. Michael and Liz, stay right there. Time for the word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me right now is Bell Point Asset Management Chief Strategist David Nelson, TJM Institutional Services Director James Urio, and Michael Lee Strategy Founder Michael Lee. Great to see everybody this morning. Thank you so much for weighing in. And Michael, kicking things off with you with another sell-off underway this morning. Futures indicating a triple-digit decline for the Dow Industrials and the NASDAQ right out of the gate as investors wait for the potential of war in Europe, growing tensions between Russia and Ukraine. Also a hotter than expected consumer price index. We are getting the PPI, producer price index, out tomorrow morning, and we will see if that confirms 40-year highs in inflation. The Dow Industrials on Friday down 500 points. The S&P and the NASDAQ both down sharply as well. Where does this go from here, Michael?
Maria, for the time being, we're in what I would call a little bit of no man's land. So on last week before the CPI print, you had roughly 25 to 30% chance the Fed would hike 50 basis points in their first in March, which is expected to be rate liftoff. That has now doubled to close to 60% in just a few days. So, and then as you go out later this year, you have a pretty wide range of views and consensus between 4 rate hikes up to 7 rate hikes. And while there's this much, while the consensus is so far apart and there's not a narrow band as to what the glide path the Fed is going to do, it's going to be very hard for stocks to make new highs and to break out. What I think we're going to see next is maybe if we don't go to war, maybe we get a slightly better PPI number tomorrow. You could see us recover some of the losses from last week. I think we are in a somewhat narrow trading range until there's a lot more certainty, until a consensus is formed around what the Fed is going to do. And then also what's not being talked about as much is the disastrous consumer confidence number we got on Friday. Some of the data in there is worse than the COVID lows. So you're clearly seeing some demand destruction, some of this inflation weigh on the consumer psyche. These things tend to compound on each other. So until we see some sort of turnaround, until this situation gets a little bit better, I think it's hard for us to break out to new highs. I'm not seeing a recession on the horizon as many others are. However, this is going to be a much slower year of growth than we've seen in the past year or so, based on a lot of these things that are going on. I tend to believe we're not going to go to war, or Russia's not going to go to war. We'll see how that plays out. That's a potential catalyst for a short-term bounce, in my opinion.
Stacey Abrams will never be governor of Georgia for one reason. She's a fraud. What she has done is materialize a lie over the last 3 years of voter suppression in Georgia, and she can never be governor. She didn't even go to the meeting with Joe Biden. When he came down there to talk about our racist voter suppression laws, she wouldn't even stand on the podium with him when he came to Georgia. And now we see him considering her sister for the Supreme Court. I mean, this is as corrupt as it gets.
And that was Georgia gubernatorial candidate, former Georgia Senator David Perdue, with me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures on why he's challenging Stacey Abrams as well as Brian Kemp coming up in the November election. Liz, before he can take on...
Yeah, Maria, so what's changed is the illegal consent decree, which led to all the massive drop boxes, voting changes, centralized counting of votes that happened in the 2020 presidential election. That's no longer going to happen this time around. I think that's going to be a huge impediment, along with the fact that there's no boogeyman to run against that Trump was in 2020 or in 2018. Remember, Stacey Abrams still has not accepted the fact that she lost by over 50,000 votes in 2018. I think Brian Kemp will ultimately lose to David Perdue. Vernon Jones only announced he was dropping out of the gubernatorial primary last week. I think once the polls update, I think Brian Kemp, for entering into that illegal consent decree, sealed his fate. I think him, not allowing any sort of audit or look at any sort of ballots that happened in the last election and kind of siding with the Democrats, the establishment over, the America First movement was the end of his political career. So it's nice to see David Perdue jump on board with that.
Yeah, you're not allowed to discuss the irregularities that we all know existed in 2020. You're only allowed to question an election if the Democrats' voting laws don't go through. Michael.
You know what happened with the DRE?
Yeah. Y'all know what this is. Go. Bottle full of bug. My mind got what you need if you need to.
All right, time for the big buzz of the morning. Hip-hop heavyweight stealing the show during Super Bowl 56 halftime. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar performing together with a surprise appearance from 50 Cent. Eminem making a statement when he took a knee after his performance. The rapper showing support for former 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who was criticized for kneeling during the national anthem in 2016. This marked the first time hip-hop artists were the main performers for the halftime show. Michael, what'd you think?
Yeah, this was the best halftime show I've ever seen. I think the first Super Bowl I watched was when the Giants won in 1986, so I've pretty much watched every single one of them there. This was head and shoulders above anything I've ever seen. And regarding Eminem taking a knee, it really didn't look like it was anything towards Colin Kaepernick. His thing was done, and he put the hood over his head. So I just thought that was his exit, and maybe people are making a big deal of it today. But this, I don't like the NFL as an organization, but my hat goes off to them. This was a spectacular show.
Yeah, it definitely was spectacular. I totally agree. You have a good analysis there on the knee, because it did bother me to see we're going back to taking the knees, but I agree. Maybe that was it, that it was his end of the performance. Michael, look, earlier in the show, we started off expecting war in Europe. You pushed back and you said you were questioning whether or not Putin would actually do it. And then in the middle of the show, we got breaking news from Lavrov and Putin that they are, in fact, opening the door to talks with the West. You were spot on. You think this was all just an attempt to get more concessions for Russia?
Yeah, look, Russia's got a tremendous amount of soldiers on the border, and the U.S. has never been weaker in terms of our military leadership and our presidential leadership. So if Putin was going to do something, now is probably the time. Futures turned on a dime as soon as that happened, just as I thought they would. But now Bullard's out there speaking, being a super hawk, so we're selling off a little bit now.
Yeah, saying that inflation is going to be with us for some time from Bullard. Thank you, Michael Lee and Liz Peek. Great to see everybody this morning. Barney.